Oh, hey, how you doing, guys? Sorry, I didn't see you guys. This is Football Miami TV, and I'm Uncle Ed, and this is,
Peter Brown.
and we're here to talk a lot of foosball or football, soccer. We've had a couple drinks, as you can tell. Peter and I have had a couple, but
I think some more than others. Tonight, though, what we're going to talk about, or today, depending
the
on when
reason
you're
why
watching,
we've been drinking is because we've been going back in time.
reminiscing, if you will.
The football history of South Florida. I was going to say Miami, but South Florida. It's really about South Florida. And Peter, I didn't know he's a history buff, so he knows
Just a little bit.
He knows quite a bit. Yeah, he's older than me, so he's got a lot of history behind him. And
But I look much younger.
yeah, okay, it's true. But so tell us, Peter.
Well, let's first off, before we get too far, make sure you guys like and subscribe to this video right here on YouTube. That really does help this channel grow. But I thought it'd be fun to talk about the history of South Florida soccer because we're all super excited about Inter Miami. David Beckham, Jorge Mas, Marcelo Claure coming into Miami, bringing us a world-class team in a world-class city.
And this is going to be a team that's going to last forever.
Forever.
Mark my words.
But
there we go.
but it didn't. There is a long history of soccer in South Florida, and to some extent, that history has a graveyard, and with a lot of tombstones. And we're going to go through some of those tombstones here in this show because there is a very rich soccer history that dates back probably even more than what we're going to cover. We're going to cover the highlights, but if there's something we've missed or something you just kind of want to walk down memory lane on, comment down below and tell us your stories. Yeah. But we got to start off way back in 1972.
Ooh, 1970. Do you remember 1972, Peter?
I actually, have a foggy memory of 1972.
Old fart over here.
With the Miami Gatos.
Gatos. That's a cool name.
Yeah, that's if Inter Miami didn't go with Inter Miami, I think Miami Gatos would have been a great name for a new team. I think it's just I think it's a perfect name. I think it's cool. It's got little Spanish going on. I think most people know it's a gato. We've got a gato right here down on the floor. He's lounged out in the studio here. Kind of the unofficial.
Mascot.
I'm not picking him up. I mean, our producer Ricky here is telling us to pick it up, but I'm not.
Ain't gonna happen, Rick.
He doesn't know me that well yet.
He's gonna scratch him.
Yeah,
he's afraid of cats.
I'm not getting scratched.
He's a gato.
I got gatophobia.
Yeah, gatophobia.
But Miami Gatos didn't last very long in Miami. They had a cool logo, looked kind of like the Puma logo and everything. I thought that was really cool. I got a T-shirt for it, but it only lasted about a year, and then they rebranded as the Miami Toros.
The Miami Toros. That's a cool name too. And recently, Peter was talking to Big O, who's one of the soccer celebrities down here, who's a radio celebrity. I'm sorry, and he loves soccer. And you interviewed him.
Yeah.
He was wearing one of those shirts.
Yeah.
When I saw that, I was like, "Oh, I want that jersey." So I need to find out where he got it.
We could definitely find out. He and I had a jersey conversation when talking about that, wondering if there was a place where we can get a Miami Gatos replica jersey. He had the Toros jersey, which was super cool. And the Toros, again, this is 1973, long time ago. They played around in Miami for a few years, and then eventually, like a lot of teams that we're going to look through, or a few, whatever. In 1976, they rebranded. The Toros rebranded as the Fort Lauderdale Strikers, moved up to up A1A for 30, 40 minutes, and to Fort Lauderdale.
And that's a little trend that we're going to see in history that's happened a couple of times. This is the first time I think that they moved up north, and the owners was Joe Robbie. Well, his wife was the owner, right?
Yeah, because at the time in the NFL, an NFL owner could not own an NFL team and any other sport. So you had to put the Fort Lauderdale Strikers in his wife's name. So Joe Robbie's wife, I'm not sure what her name was, but obviously it was Robbie.
Mrs. Robbie.
Mrs. Robbie owned the Fort Lauderdale Strikers. And at that time, Fort Lauderdale Strikers was getting around 8,000, 10,000 people in the stands week in, week out. This is the Pele era. And
I got to see Pele when I was a kid. My dad took me. I was telling you about that earlier. I was born in L.A. and I went to go see Aztecs games, and I got to see Pele, and I saw the Strikers too with Ray Hudson and Gerd Mueller, and dude, that was incredible time to be
Yeah.
alive.
Yeah, I
see
used to
those
go to
teams.
some of the games with the Strikers back in the 70s. You know, we didn't go to every game. Family couldn't afford it, but it was always around my birthday. That would be one of my birthday presents. We'd go to a Strikers game. And quite often, my memories are less about the Cosmos, more about going to games against those hated Tampa Bay Rowdies. And it was fun because I'm a
still hate
kid.
them. Wow.
It's funny, is I'm a kid going to Lockhart Stadium and I'm seeing fans wearing the Tampa Bay Rowdies shirt. And I'm like asking my parents, like, what are they doing here?
Yeah.
I didn't understand a rival supporter coming to our city and cheering against us. But those are some of the great memories of going to see the Strikers in the 70s. And they had, I mean, it was electric down here for a little while. They were all over. They were hanging out. We've interviewed Rocky Ray Hudson, one of the star players from the Strikers of that era. Back in those days, they were rock stars down here, hanging out with the Miami Dolphins, partying. They owned Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah, and then Ray told us about, he was down here, and what did he call it? He said it was paradise. Mm-hmm. We had a recording in one of those, and our producer Ricky's talking about it too, because he saw that interview. It was really cool. All these guys were rock stars, like Peter was saying. So it was a different era.
Yeah.
That was a good
But
era.
the problem was it didn't last, and this was the NASL. And they kind of NASL, if you follow any of the history of United States soccer, crashed and burned rather quickly. Poor management, what have you. Strikers didn't quite go away. They just kind of rebranded a little bit in 1984 as a Fort Lauderdale Sun. It was still, Ray Hudson was still with the team. It was still the same colors, but it was now the Fort Lauderdale Sun. Different ownership. Playing still at Lockhart Stadium. Now this was in a league, a smaller league, the APSL, if I remember correctly, something like that, where Fort Lauderdale's Sun was playing and still had great memories. That's my high school years.
Whoa.
So I was going to
That was
see.
a long
I was
time
going
ago.
to see the Fort Lauderdale Sun. Still thinking of them as the Strikers. But again, we had a really pretty good support in Fort Lauderdale for this lower level team that got no publicity at this point. They were no longer rock stars. They were, nobody really knew about them, but they were getting some fun crowds week in and week out. So Lockhart became kind of the mecca for soccer in South Florida for quite a while. And then that, as Fort Lauderdale Strikers. And then in 1988, they came back. They rebranded back as the Strikers.
Wow. Well, I wouldn't remember that, Peter.
So that's why I'm doing all the talking, because
Yeah,
Ed wasn't even here.
I was in California, in high school myself, so.
Right. Well,
Back in the day.
1988, I had already graduated high school.
Oh, that's how old you are. So.
And my computer just went to
His
sleep.
computer went to goodbye. But yeah, I mean, those were times when I wasn't even around, here in South Florida. But it was a time I remember because I started playing soccer in high school, and there was like nothing. And I was a decent player. I wasn't probably the best, but
I was bad.
There was like no hope for us to go to a different level because there was no professional soccer team. So no professional league really. There was a. What was it called back? Something League A or something like
A-League.
that. A-League.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Eventually became the USL.
Yeah. But it was, it was college, mostly college students, and it went nowhere. So there was no future for us. But then things changed. What was it?
Well, in 1988, we were the Strikers. They rebirthed. And at that same time, though, which was cool, is soccer came back to Miami. Miami Sharks came into Miami, and they were only called the Sharks for such a brief time that I don't even remember it.
Wow.
It was something I just looked up and I saw. I remember them being named Miami Freedom. Wow. Does that name sound familiar?
Yeah, sure kind of does.
It sounds like there could be a park with that name someday.
Miami Freedom
Park. That's a good name. I wonder why they picked it.
But that's pretty cool. That's part of history.
Exactly. When we were as fans, we were kind of bantering about like different names for Inter Miami. I actually threw out Miami Freedom as a name. I don't think it's a great soccer name.
Right.
By no means. But it's got history.
Right.
So it's part of Miami. And Moss Brothers have a connection to Freedom Tower. So it all kind of made sense to me. But they did not name the team Miami Freedom, but they are going to name their Stadium Park, Miami Freedom Park. And that is such a cool tie-in back to South Florida soccer. And so Miami Freedom at this time were playing in the APSL against the Strikers, and they were playing in the Orange Bowl. Nobody went. But I remember going to some of those games in the Orange Bowl, and because at that time I was following the Strikers, so I'd go to drive down to Miami, watch some, hopefully beat Miami Freedom.
Yeah.
But Miami Freedom had a decent lifespan from 1988 to 1992.
Wow. And then there was a large period of time where there was nothing. It was emptiness.
We went 6 years with nada.
Nothing.
Speak a little Spanish.
Yeah, I saw that. Pretty good. So yeah, so it was a period of silence. Nothing happened. Soccer was dead. World Cup happened.
It did. A new league formed.
Yes. The league that we now have today, Major League Soccer.
Right here. This league, right?
Yeah, this one right here. And we got a team. Well, they had what was it, 8 teams at first?
So 1996 was the beginning of the league, so they played a couple years. We came into the league. Miami Fusion came into the league with the Chicago Fire in 1998. And they also, the weird thing about this, and if you're not from South Florida and you're watching this, the weird thing is that Miami Fusion did not play in Miami.
Yeah. Like everybody knows, this is kind of a banana republic that we live in, Miami. So the politicians, everybody wanted money here and there, and I'm not saying that they're crooked, but nothing happened. There was support, there wasn't support. They wanted to play at Orange Bowl Stadium. It didn't happen, but somebody up north wanted them to play there.
The deal was almost signed for the Orange Bowl. I mean, they were just, it was so close to happening. But it ended up happening at Lockhart Stadium. I think the biggest mistake with this was that they still decided to go with the name Miami Fusion. Mm-hmm. That was the biggest mistake, I think. They should have called it Fort Lauderdale Fusion if they're going to call it anything. You're playing in Fort Lauderdale. But it was called Miami Fusion, added to some confusion because, we're sitting here saying, come see Miami Fusion. It's only about 45 to 50 minutes north.
Well, a lot of people say, when I travel to, Miami, I mean, you probably come up with the same thing. You're traveling to Fort Lauderdale because he lives in Fort Lauderdale, but a lot of people, like, say in Brazil or, South America, you tell them Fort Lauderdale, they're like, what? Miami. Oh, okay. Yeah. So
look, we're in the Tri-County area. To me, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm, we're all basically the same. It's not too far to drive for anybody. I drive to Miami all the time to come see my buddy Ed, to go see inter-Miami related events. So I have no problem driving. So everybody should shut up and just drive.
Yeah.
But
go.
but regardless of the fact that we had a great fun time from 1998 to 2001 with the Miami Fusion.
It was the best team. Well,
that last year.
Yeah, the beginning was rocky. There was a lot of I would say bad coaches. And
yeah, we saw some coaches come and go. We had Cacho Cordoba that started off with the Miami Fusion, then quickly went to Ivo Wortman, Brazilian coach.
Yeah. And then who followed after that?
A guy named Ray Hudson.
Ray who? Ray Hudson. Of course we remember him.
Being sports legend.
Yeah, and he took the team to new levels. And that last year was magic. I remember it. We went to all the games. And, the aficionados existed, those rowdy guys in the back. And those were good times, man.
Oh, man, that was amazing. At that time, I was a single guy. Was going to every single game. Had my jersey. I literally would go to the game.
Did you have long hair back then?
Yes.
Oh, we're going to put up a picture of that.
We'll have to find a picture. Yeah. I was a bit of a rocker back in those days. But, I'd go watch the game. And all the games were also broadcast on Sun Sports. So I'd go watch I would DVR or VCR probably.
VCR.
Back then it was probably the VCR. But I would record the games.
Betamax.
I didn't have Betamax.
Oh,
I'm not. Come on. But I would go watch the games live, and then I'd go in that same night and rewatch them right away.
Wow.
It was so much fun. We had such a great time. It was a blast. It didn't last.
I remember the drives back. They had the press conferences, and Ray Hudson was talking, and my dad and I would laugh all the way home. And it was really entertaining because everybody knows he's in beIN Sports, Ray Hudson, and he was just talking a storm, about the game and the team, and And if the officiating was bad, he'd talk about it. He no bars hold. He would talk whatever would happen. So it was a good time. It was good stuff.
Yeah, and, a lot of people kind of look at Miami Fusion as a failure, and it wasn't a failure based on fans because it started off. I was at that first game, 25,000 people, amazing. Was there a drop off? Absolutely, but it had come back up in that last season. Mm-hmm. But the problem was the owner really at the end of the time, Ken Horowitz, ran out of money, and at that time, MLS, everybody was losing lots of money. MLS then is not what MLS is today, and you had to have a big fat bank to withstand the lean years, and he couldn't withstand the lean years. And at the end of the day, regardless of the fan support, more fans, all that would have really done is maybe get an investor. So if we had a bigger fan base, maybe we could have convinced another investor to come in. But Ken Horowitz was out. Yeah. He was out before really midway through that season or even earlier. Mm-hmm. So the Fusion, the writing was on the wall. They were going to put that tombstone into the graveyard.
And it happened, unfortunately, for all of us fans. For me, it was a big heartbreak because, we were standing there, like I think Big O said, there were like 200 of us out there, with signs saying, save the team. And it didn't happen. And for like many years, I didn't want to watch Major League Soccer because I was that hurt that they did that to us. They took our team.
So I followed Ray Hudson, and for at least that one next year, I cheered on DC United just because I was cheering on Ray Hudson. Right. So, but that time we had 5 years with nothing once again, and then Miami FC came to town. Miami FC came to town. They were playing in USL at that time. We became very close, had very good relationship with Miami FC. They were playing at Tropical Park.
So he started a supporters group that all us started to follow. They were the Miami Ultras.
Miami Ultras all started off just because I created a stupid website. Then a few people just found it. Mm-hmm. And that's another story for another time. But, they were playing at Tropical Park. So now soccer was back in Miami.
Yeah, and there we were. We'd get together, have a couple beers like we are right now. And then we'd watch some soccer in what was the state? Tropical Park.
Tropical Park.
And we were drinking some beers, and it was a good time. But unfortunately, it happened again.
Well, yeah. So we got to get through this part maybe a little quick. But there were some. They had some good name players that came to town.
Sorry. Yeah, way ahead of myself. Romario.
That's what I was going to say. Romario came to town. Famous Brazilian player. Wanted to come. I think he really wanted to come to a league where he can easily score a bunch of goals to pad up that stats, so he can go down as a history.
Yeah, I think he was close to 1,000 goals or something. So he just wanted to score a lot of goals.
All Romario did is kind of stand near the goal and walk around the goal.
Kind of like he plays.
That's how I play.
Kind of like he plays.
That's how I play. I'm not running. I'm going to just stand by the goal and just knock it in.
Yeah,
That's it. That's it. Especially when we play, there's no offsides.
Right. So it's a lot easier.
A lot easier. But, they had some mismanagement. A lot of teams here in South Florida, and it looks like things are different now. But a lot of teams in South Florida think that, hey, it's soccer. We have Latinos. We have Haitians. We have all these people from all these different countries. All I have to do is put a team out on the field and they will come. It doesn't work. You've got to do the marketing. You've got to do all this other stuff that a lot of these teams did not do. Miami FC was a victim of that.
Yeah, even though they had Romario, a lot of people didn't know that Romario was playing. As a matter of fact, I remember that a couple years after they were still playing, people were asking, "Oh, isn't this the team that Romario's on?"
Yeah.
Because they heard about it a couple of years back. That's how bad the marketing was.
But as much as we could say bad about Miami FC, we had so many good times with Miami FC. There were times where there was literally 300 might be generous. 300 fans in the crowd. I know there was several times where it's just a very small group of people watching this team, cheering them on, and it was at times sad. But we did have a lot of fun. Miami FC lasted in Miami for 5 years. There's a kind of a thing here. 5 years of no soccer, and then 5 years in Miami. And then guess what happens?
They moved up north.
Back to Fort Lauderdale. What Miami FC decided to do is they took one season, played half a season in FIU in Miami, and half the season in Lockhart Stadium. And then they wanted to see which one had better attendance. They made a decision. Fort Lauderdale won. They rebranded. It's the Fort Lauderdale Strikers. Now, this time, they used this logo right here, and they were back.
They were back, and it was good times for us. We had a team again. A lot of us that followed Miami FC, we went up north. Instead of Peter driving down south to Miami FC, I started going up to Fort Lauderdale. So it was a lot of fun. Still, as the Miami Ultras, we remained as soccer supporters there, and it was like I said, good times because they also started getting some good players.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It's really sad. Regardless of what's going on with Inter Miami, I wish the Fort Lauderdale Strikers were still around and survived. They again were caught up in mismanagement. They were part of the NASL. NASL collapsed. They brought in some new Brazilian ownership. The old Brazilian ownership is kind of kicked out a little bit. They had to sell the team because they were part of the big FIFA scandal, and so we got some new Brazilian owners that we had. They spoke. They had such. I'm at a loss of words because they promised so many things they couldn't deliver. It sounded like it was going to be so amazing, and it fell flat. They even talked about having drones deliver your food to you in Lockhart Stadium.
Yeah,
I mean, we're talking about delivering drones. Meanwhile, they can't even pay their vendors.
Right.
These were the worst owners you could ever imagine. One thing I've learned is I don't know if I want Brazilian owners. Maybe that's what's wrong with Orlando.
Well, that's another show right there.
Well,
there's plenty wrong with
anytime
Orlando.
we could throw in a little dig on the Orlando City, we'll do it.
Yeah.
But all in good fun. But they just mismanaged the team. It folded, and it kind of gone away. And so now Fort Lauderdale does not have local soccer. But what was really cool in the middle of all this. In 2012, we started having some lower tier teams just popping up out of nowhere. Teams, a really grassroots kind of level of soccer really started to develop in Miami. And I think, in my opinion, that helped lead us to where we are today with Inter Miami.
There was a lot of interest for soccer. A lot of, like Peter was saying, a lot of small teams that started developing. The first one I think was Miami United. Mm-hmm. Roberto Sacca, shout out to you. He was like the pioneer of all these little teams that started developing in South Florida. And then there was
we had a reincarnation of the Miami Fusion, short-lived, but in the NPSL lower levels, that does kind of happen. Sometimes teams come and go quite often. Had FC Miami City, they were playing in I think
APSL or
the PDL. I think they were playing in the PDL. You also had the Floridians FC up in Fort Lauderdale playing at the Cricket Stadium. Also, my friends at Boca Raton FC. I've got a great relation with them. I used to do a little radio show with them. And also, if you want to include Palm Beach United. Plus, there's more. There's some teams that we're just not even thinking about. But there was such a resurgence of lower level soccer that actually was getting some attendance. And these teams were being treated as kind of professional outfits. Miami United, I remember going to see their first season, and it was terrible. And it wasn't terrible on the field. It was just that they were making a lot of mistakes in how they ran the team. But they fixed those mistakes, and that's where you learn to fix them. And they come back, and now they're a much more professional organization, really well run. And we'll talk a little bit more about them in a few minutes. But a really healthy, lower division level of soccer really developed back in 2012 and is still thriving now.
Yeah, there's a lot of teams that are still playing it now. There's so many more teams. And like Peter was saying, that gave like a resurgence to South Florida in soccer-wise, to the point where a new team arose.
With an old name. A new team with an old name.
A new version of the Miami FC developed. So at first, when I first heard about it, I was like, who are these guys? What are they? And apparently they were the real thing.
And that's Ricardo Silva is the owner of that team, and we've talked a few times about them in other shows. But they're the ones that currently playing at FIU, Florida International University Stadium. Spent a bunch of money in that stadium. Ricardo Silva's got his name on the stadium, and so they really have treated it like a professional organization, throwing a ton of money, spent so much money in their last league of NASL that some people kind of blame them for the collapse of the NASL because they were overspending and the other teams could not compete. They really did spend a lot of money.
Yeah, they were.
But as a fan, you love it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's great.
A lot of people would go to the games. They had like 10,000 people show up to games. And it was second division. So there was talk of them going to Major League Soccer. We talked about it, I think, in the previous show. But it didn't go through.
No.
What happened with that? Remember?
Well, the owner wanted to kind of force his way into MLS, so it didn't really quite work out. But, so that's the basically, kind of wrapping things up now. It leads us to where we are today. In 2020, we'll have Inter Miami FC taking the field. But before when you're cheering for Inter Miami FC, when you think about that, just think about all the teams that have come and that have paved the way for the success of Inter Miami. Because there's a lot of things that this current ownership group can look at and things that they can do and things that they should not do. Learn from the mistakes that a lot of these teams made. There were a lot of mistakes in a lot of these teams, but we have a rich history here in South Florida soccer, and really Inter Miami is going to take it to that next level.
Yeah. I've got no doubt because we've got, first of all, David Beckham, who's the face of the team, and so much deep pockets with all the other owners of the team. So we're looking forward, and we're hoping that this is not one of those teams that.
No, it's not. It's not going to
happen.
Let's go to the news. In the news, Ed, what do we got in the news?
All right, in the news, Peter, we've got a new league that's launching, NPSL. And this is a big thing. We were just talking about Miami FC. They're one of the teams that's going to be on there,
Right. So NPSL is launching into a new pro league. So they're going to keep their fourth division level of soccer that Boca Raton FC is in, but they're launching into a full pro league now, starting in 2019. They're going to have 11 teams, and Ed can maybe read off some of those teams. If he can get it to the site.
And actually, no, I don't.
You can't. So some of the teams that are going to be launched in 2019, the founding teams are going to be ASC San Diego, Cal FC, California United Strikers FC, so 3 teams in California, Chattanooga FC, Detroit City FC. They have been a great success story. SC Arizona, Miami FC, Miami United, Milwaukee Torrent, and New York Cosmos. Oh, and can't forget the Oakland Roots. Never heard of them. But the Oakland Roots, they're all planning on playing in this new professional. It's going for the first year. It's going to be a shortened season, and it's going to be called the Founders Cup. But then in 2020, they're going to do a full schedule, possibly adding some more teams. Teams maybe like Jacksonville Armada has been talked about as possibly playing in that league. So some of the teams that left the NA were left without a league in the NASL. A lot of them went to the NPSL. And some of this hits home because last year I was doing a radio show for Boca Raton FC, and I would talk to our old buddy Jim Rooney. I would talk to him quite often, and I would ask him questions about playing against teams like Miami FC, Miami United, Jacksonville Armada. These were all teams that were run like professional organizations. Miami FC kept quite a few of their NASL level players, Division II level players, playing in the 4th division. They were running over the competition. So I was always of the impression that this had to happen. Yeah. We had to split up. There had to be. You couldn't have a pro organization playing against a true grassroots, locally owned amateur team. Yeah. And that's what, say, Boca Raton FC is. And they're a great little organization, but they're a grassroots, family-owned soccer club. You can't go against week in and week out and expect great results against a professional team when you're waiting for your top talent to to be released from college so they can play with you, and you're missing them for the first 3 games.
Right. It's impossible to be able to compete with that. But this is going to be interesting because there's a couple of teams in Miami. Miami United, which is one of the teams that we talked about earlier, that developed in a time when there wasn't any soccer here in South Florida. He was like the pioneer back then. Roberto Saca has done incredible work with that team.
All right, last story for the show is about St. Louis. St. Louis wants to get into MLS because who doesn't?
Well, St. Louis has been one of those teams like Miami, one of those cities like Miami, that has been constantly in the news trying to get a team into their city. And it's been a lot of different ownership groups have approached them.
They've almost been in.
Yeah.
They've been out.
A few times.
Yep.
Yeah, like Miami.
Now they have an ownership group that has pledged to the city and to the league that they will privately finance a $250 million stadium that's 20,000 seats downtown stadium. So this whole thing about privately financing your stadium, something that Inter Miami is doing, is catching on.
That's the way to go.
I think people have realized building a stadium is hard, and taxpayers are tired of paying for it.
What can we say? I mean, I think that's the future. Everybody needs to do that. Nobody wants to pay more taxes. So,
There's a catch. There's a catch.
Uh-oh.
They, however, they do want some tax breaks.
Oh.
So they're hoping to forego property tax and some other things, in order to get this done, and to get into the next round of expansion. But so to be exact, so the tax breaks will be a proposed 50% break on ticket taxes,
Okay.
a full tax exemption on stadium construction materials, $30 million tax breaks from the state, and a 3% sales tax on stadium goods and the free use of the land for the stadium.
Okay.
That would never pass in Miami.
No.
Never. All those little asterisks would never pass in Miami. The only way it would happen in Miami is we're paying for everything. Hey, there's a some industrial waste underneath the golf course. We'll pay for it. Mm-hmm. Moss Brothers, we'll pay for it because they have to. They're going to pay what, 33 million, something like that, to fix that.
They're paying a lot of money. They're
So,
paying like $1 billion, I think.
I'm curious what the St. Louis people will say, the citizens will say of that. They also didn't get robbed by the Marlins.
Like we did. Yeah.
Like we did down here, and felt so it's a little bit different. But it'll be interesting to see, does St. Louis have a chance? Is St. Louis a right choice for expansion for MLS? Because MLS doesn't seem to be slowing down.
No. How many teams are they going to stop at? It just keeps going and going.
They're talking now 26, but then I thought I read somewhere where Garber is saying there's a World Cup coming up, which will then get everybody more excited, in a few years as that World Cup starts getting, built up and everything. And then there's going to be a cup here in the United States eventually. Right. Yeah, I don't know. I don't see them slowing down.
So it's going to be interesting to see what develops with Major League Soccer, if they're ever going to stop getting additional teams. But the league's doing well. So.
I think having a hard time here. I think the magic number for them is probably 32 because there's 32 NFL teams, and Garber comes from the NFL.
So maybe that's going to be the point of.
I don't know. I'm just guessing. But interesting thing about St. Louis, they want to build a stadium. They'll privately fund it, but they want a lot of tax breaks. And that is our news.
All right. So, guys, thank you for watching us. Remember to subscribe and like us here on YouTube. And
put the comments down below, whatever you think about this show. Your comments on expansion, your memories in the history of South Florida soccer. Put them in the comments below. We'd love to read them. And if we get any good comments, we'll talk about them on the next show. See you next time.